Hey, this is Tiqqle, and in this video we're going to do a tier list video of all the specs in World of Warcraft going into Shadowlands, and how fun they are based on their conduits, their legendaries, what I've been seeing in terms of their damage distribution in the mythics. We've been doing every night on stream, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So let's go ahead and just jump right into it. We'll also be mentioning, I'll be talking about the representation I've been seeing through the beta, because we've been playing beta every day. And to be honest, certain classes have been there, certain classes haven't, or maybe only a few times. Honestly, I think there needs to be a full kind of representation in the beta to be able to really test things like, for example, Fury Warrior. Il Pilgrim's the only Fury Warrior in the beta. So things like that. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. And I'd like to thank the sponsor of this video, GMG Performance. We all spend a lot of time in front of screens, whether it's through our gaming sessions, on our mobile device, or at work, like me, where I stare all day into the blue abyss, or you're watching series on TV. And you probably have experienced eye strain or itchy eye, or like you're getting really tired, your eyes are getting really tired. Well, that's all about the blue light coming from the screen. And that's what GMG's Performance's glasses are meant to help you with. They basically block out the blue light, which can seriously damage our eyes or disturb our sleep or being able to get a good rest. The GMG Performance glasses act as a shield against the blue light. They help reduce the eye strain and improve your concentration while you're doing those gaming sessions, and it allows you to get to sleep without your brain being disrupted by all of that blue light. I have used glasses in the past that have had a yellow tint. Here's a picture of me with them. And to be honest, I never really wanted to go out and about with them. I never really wanted to wear them at work, so I never did. And so my eyes suffered. So these are a really cool and slick pair of glasses where it actually stops the blue light from getting at you. So you can actually tell the difference when you're looking at the screen. You're not feeling as like radiated as much. And there's a 40% discount starting right now until November 1st. Check it out before that Shadowlands drops and you start all day long. So the link is down below in the description. Check it out. That'll get you through my link for the best rate possible. So let's go ahead and jump into it. I'll put the tank rolls in on top of the video, guys. Don't worry. Let's go ahead and start with the exact order of this tier list. Affliction Warlock. To be honest, they've totally changed them, right, since BFA. I think that not only in PvP, which we already know that they're just mopping the floor with kids. I also think that in PvE, it's going to be a more fun playstyle. I think it will be a love or hate relationship with the dot type style damage, because you will be managing a lot of dots. That will be part of your objective, is getting as many dots out and then popping them with Malfic Rapture. So to be honest, I want to put it in the S tier, but I do think in terms of fun factor, it's really going to be hit or miss. People will like it or people will not like managing those dots everywhere. I personally am excited for it, but I'm a little bit cautious because there are a lot of dots that you're managing, at least 3 on pretty much every target. Now, next up is Arcane Mage. And by the way, Affliction is on, I put it on A. So Arcane Mage, interesting enough, there's been a lot of shift of mage lately, especially in this latest build. In the latest build, Frost Mage was nerfed because of their conduits. Now, Arcane Mage was recently buffed for its Arcane Barrage, and it was doing like 220k damage if it was storing up this certain power with kind of pooling power within their arcane barrages. Now, to be honest with you, I think this is one of the classes Blizzard is trying to bring back into the fold after really being a touchy, not really that viable class in BFA at certain periods. I think that even in PvP with Alter Time is a huge way, and I've been watching, Zarya use this to huge success. That's going to be a big cooldown for them on top of Temporal Shield, etc., right? So I'm actually going to put this at the S tier. I think that even though they're extremely squishy, that I think that they're going to be a class that is going to be fun to play and is actually getting some flair. They did stop the counter blinking happening, but it's okay. I know a lot of people are going to say in the comments, yo, but you just spamming those arcane missiles. I think that is going to be a more fun playstyle than it has been in the past, and I think in terms of mage specs, it's going to be more viable than it has been in the past. In terms of damage in PvE, I did the Mythic Raid testing. Frost was way ahead of every other mage spec, but there were some arcanes that were pumping right along. So with the recent changes, I'm looking forward to seeing where arcane lands in the raid tier in terms of DPS. Remember, this isn't DPS. This is fun, interactive. How is it doing from those senses, based on conduits, based on legendary, based on overall kit? All right, so next one up is Arms Warrior. Arms Warrior frankly has gotten a lot of utility and a lot of things that give it some more survivability, even for mythics, giving it the ability to not just have one defensive cooldown like an enhanced shaman has for so long. This is something that is definitely needed in a Mythic Plus situation and defensively. I also think, and I did rate them S tier previously, in my previous video, which I'll put down my previous tier list in the comment, but I'm going to put them in the A tier. I think in terms of fun, they have the utility, they have the mobility. I'm just concerned about where they're going to land in terms of their damage rotation because of, still been hearing some comments about the rage generation. There's been some adjustments recently about their mass spell reflection in PvP. Some of that flare that happened in early beta is being pulled back, and it's being pulled back for a lot of classes, so I'm going to put that into the A tier. Now, Assassination Rogue, I'm going to be honest with you. I know I've heard that this is faring well, especially when looking at some of the other rogue specs. It's been doing pretty decently. But to be honest, I'm personally just not that into the fact that the playstyle is very similar to where it is. There are some conduits, there are some legendaries that might help it out, but I'm still going to be putting that into the C tier. I personally think that in terms of this playstyle and the dot damage, and how that works in Mythic Pluses, I'm just not a big fan of it personally. Remember, this is my personal opinion on the breakdown. I personally am not as big of a fan. I think that many players would like to see more direct damage in terms of rogue damage, which I think we're seeing in some of the other specs being kind of brought up to par, particularly in PvP with sub, which is insane. And then in PvE as well, which is something that we're seeing with some specs as well, some outlaw tuning, as we know that it was such a savage in Mythic Plus in BFA. This was definitely an outlier, so I put Assassination in C tier. It was an outlier in PvP in BFA. It was just so strong. The damage over time was just so strong, and the rottiness is just. But I'm not a particular fan of that playstyle for Rogue. I think that many other with rogues, all the other rogues getting the poisons. Well, sub already had, right? But with outlaw getting poisons, with sub being brought in the fold, I personally think this is gonna be on a lower tier, mostly just because of the fact that the other specs are also going to be rising up. Next is Balanced Druid. I'm actually going to be putting Balanced Druid on the B tier. The B tier being, I still think that it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm just not convinced that the Eclipse system is something that is going to be overall looking back, it's going to be like a good thing for Boomkins. It seems like everything in BFA, the current playstyle of it by generating astral power and then dumping it is still the way you're going to be doing a lot of your damage. The one thing I would say, I would move it up to A tier if I was 100% convinced that you would really be using Full Moon and that the legendaries would really be enabling you to get some big pressure out there. Right now, I do feel like Starfall is doing a lot of damage, which is an interesting angle to take in terms of an AoE. I know it's not pulling everything in the dungeon anymore, but I'm just personally, I'm putting it here kind of hesitantly. I know that I haven't seen many Boomkins out there, so I haven't been able to gauge it too much. I personally did try it out a bit. It still feels a lot like BFA. The only thing is now I have the Eclipse system, which I really should fit my rotation into, but I can just not do that. I can kind of ignore that whole rotation mechanic, and it will punish me by not increasing that damage. But it's also like, well, it's kind of a little bit confusing why that's not like more critical to the rotation. Obviously it is for optimizing, but I think for Boomkin, I'm just not 100% sold on that it's going to be that fluid in the end. I think in PvP, they could be absolutely solid, especially with certain conduits they have for burst, or certain legendaries, but frankly, I'm a little bit hesitant on this one just because I was expecting to see a few other changes from the Eclipse system and even from in the PvP department, but that's where I'm going to put it. BM Hunter, I'm going to put that down in the C tier as well. I think that this is a class that has the potential to be pretty flavorful, but for some reason it feels like Blizzard isn't really focusing on them as a tuning point. I think that the rotation and where they were in BFA, they were at such a high tier at the end of end of BFA in terms of rating in Mythic Plus. I almost feel like Blizzard's purposely being like, let's put them down a little bit. Let's put them down. The other thing is they have certain talents that you would think would do a lot of damage, but they just don't. And I don't really understand that, and it makes the rotation feel kind of weird. You're ramping up for certain things like the Spitting Cobra, and it just doesn't really do anything. Stampede also, similarly, not doing as much damage as I would have expected. Especially with its target cap unleashed, right? In terms of legendaries, also not really that impressed with most of the Hunter legendaries, truthfully. I really would have liked to see something that was a little bit more modifying their rotation or throwing out many more pets or something like that, but we didn't really see that happen. Now, Demo, I'm gonna put that into the B tier with Boomkin. I'm hesitant. I've heard good things. I've seen them very rarely on the beta. I've played it a little bit, and frankly, I think Demo is going to fall into the bucket of it will be good if damage tuning favors them. If damage tuning does not favor them, then I think it's going to be in a rough situation from a fun playstyle. I think that the playstyle is relatively similar to BFA. Again, the Demonic Tyrant being a part of its core, which I'm not a big fan of from a playstyle. Having your ramping damage like peak with a pet is not necessarily my cup of joe. It's just not that exciting to me, especially in a PvP sense. Remember, I'm giving this opinion, PvE, PvP mixed together in terms of fun. I think that in PvP, we're going to see that Demo Warlocks are going to be shadowed by their Affliction brothers and sisters. Now, Destro Warlock I'm going to be putting down in the C tier, mainly because I personally think that this, again, was in such a strong place in BFA, that the playstyle has been changed so drastically, it's going to be hard for some people to get used to it. That's my personal opinion. I think that there are some legendaries that make it kind of more exciting, but it does seem like they're bringing things into the realm of fire damage as well as infernal spams. I've seen some mythics where there have been like 6 infernals out because there's the talent now that instead of ramping cast bolt damage, it's ramping up procs of infernal. So you know what? I'm gonna put that here. Actually, I'm actually shifting Destro to B tier because you know what? It's because they did change the playstyle so much. If the rotation is worked out well and fire really does come to shine and it is that fresh of a class, you know, maybe it will be pretty fun. Now, again, I did see some people doing pretty good damage on this in the mythic testing, but they were also some of those people were using some gear bugs, as you guys probably know about the gem sockets. Now, Disc Priest, I'm going to be putting Disc Priest, I think in the S tier because they're doing really well, and I'm very happy for them. It looks like they're now going to be viable in multiple compositions. They're not going to be punished as much in Mythic Pluses as I felt like they were in BFA. In terms of arena comps, I think we're going to see them a lot more. I think this is a class, though, that is at risk of being gutted. Like, if they get a few things tweaked, and like, for example, whenever they nerf their damage, they're actually nerfing like damage and healing. You know what? Their absorption shields are really strong right now. If they modify a few things on the Disc Priest, it will really rip them out of their current spot, which is really in a good spot. I mean, they're really in a good place in terms of damage and in terms of healing. I also think that priests in general are going to be kind of high on this tier list in terms of PvP because they have some flavorful stuff. They have mind games. That is one of the most interesting PvP abilities, or Covenant abilities, I have seen. In terms of Covenant abilities for Disc, again, if you go PvP and you go Mind Games, like you're Banff. If you go Kyrian and you're using your freaking laser, what is it, like your, I forget what it's called, but your freaking laser beams and AoE explosions, you're doing a ton of damage, and it is a fun playstyle. It actually makes you feel kind of Super Saiyan in that, or Thor in those moments. So I'm going to be putting Disc there, but it's a sensitive S, because I think that if it gets modified a little bit, although the playstyle will be enjoyable, it will be not viable in PvP, and in PvE, it will suffer in the Mythic Plus scene. I think that in raids, you know, I did see, I think we saw some Disc Priest when I was doing the raid that I was doing, but we'd have to check. We also have from the last Mythic raid test, which was September 10th. I'll put a link down below. We did a spreadsheet that shows you all of the logs for kills during that testing period for healers and for DPS. You can see how they did based on that. And again, I'm not basing this based on how they're doing. It's based on how I've been seeing them running, how they looks like they're doing in terms of rotation and distribution of damage and such. So, in my opinion, of course. So Ellie, I'm going to be putting Ellie into the B tier because I'm really concerned in their current state. Ellie is a class that I think that actually has some really cool conduits. They have some really interesting legendaries, but Ellie has gone through a roller coaster, and you guys know this because I main Shaman. They going through a roller coaster of changes. They started with Fulmination. They then got a bunch of legendaries that proc certain things, they got Elemental Blast that proc legendaries into SOP. Then they got a lot of this stuff peeled away and kind of like streamlined. Got new talents. The new talents aren't really that viable, except for Echoing Shock, which is really cool. So in my opinion, I'm putting Ellie here because without Ellie having a kind of a rework or a fix of their AoE, I'm really worried with how they're going to be doing and how they're going to be perceived by their community. In terms of fun, I think they're extremely fun. But they're not. There's certain things about them that really bother me. Mainly, Chain Lightning is not doing much damage at all. The fact that you're getting into Earthquakes that are also not doing any damage, it actually seems like a bug that they're balancing when they got into Shadowlands, like they forgot to re-up the Earthquakes. So I'm putting this here. I think also the Fire Ellie, the fact that you can get it out for 40 seconds now instead of like the usual whatever it was, 30, is really nice. Like that's really cool, especially for Storm Elemental. So I'm going to put this here. I would raise this up. I think they're going to be very strong in PvE. I think Ellie's going to be very, very strong in PvP, but I'm concerned from a fun factor and from a perception factor if their AoE is not adjusted. For Enhance, I'm putting Enhance at S tier. I think Enhance listen, I think there's some things that need to get fixed. I think that there's some things in PvP that really need to get fixed that will make this not... Actually, I have to put it on A tier. Because in PvE, I would put it S tier. In PvP, I would put it like B tier. So I'm going to hit somewhere in the middle. Similarly with Ellie, I would have put on like A tier in PvP, and then I would have put it on C tier probably in in AoE, and then A tier for single target, but whatever. But Enhance, yeah, I'm putting it at A because in single target, I think first of all, I think it's really fun to play it in PvE. In Mythic Plus, it's very satisfying now. The rotation is not simple, but I think it is rewarding, and they're doing a lot of damage. Wind Fury was recently buffed. There's conduits and covenants that complement multiple playstyles. We really do like that. Now, the only reason I'm not putting it in an S tier is because Enhance needs a new defensive. It needs another defensive, and it needs probably a rework of its wolves to make it viable. Otherwise, it's going to die in PvP immediately, or it's going to have to rely on all this resto stuff to keep it up, and it's just not a good look. So I think with that being its one crutch, otherwise I would have put it in S tier, but that's where I'm putting Enhance. I'm really excited. I'll be maining Enhance and alting in Ellie and Resto Shaman, but that's where I'm going to put it for now. Now, Feral Druid, honestly, Feral Druid is one of those classes you're kind of seeing hit or miss. I do think they do need some help, though. I think that they are based on the damage tuning of some of their dots, I think that's where they're going to kind of rubber's going to hit the road with Feral. I think Feral, which I'm putting on the B tier, is a class that their design hasn't changed too much, so they're not that like fresh and new, but they did get some legendaries that make them chomp pretty hard. In PvP, I've been seeing in some cases they do get some damage, but they can be shut down really easily. I know I'm talking a little bit fast, but we do have a lot of classes to get through. So that's where I'm going to put Feral. I think legendaries, conduits, like they have some stuff that are making it kind of a flavorful class, but again, damage tuning is where they really need some help. I think that is what could bring a few of these classes from the B tier to the A or the S tier. That's what I think in terms of fun, in terms of legendaries, conduits, and where they're going to be sitting at the end of the day. Fire Mage I'm going to be putting down in the C tier, mainly because I think that it could be a fun playstyle, but I honestly don't believe that Fire is going to be quite as competitive as the other specs of Mage. I think that this is one where GPI was nerfed in PvP. They did get Phoenix Flames brought back. There are some conduits that do seem a little bit spicy, but in reality, I do think that they're going to take the back seat similar to these other kind of tier 1 specs, and I'm going to put them into this tier of C. I think that they're going to sit here for a little bit and recuperate a little bit as their other specs kind of shine a little bit more. So again, Phoenix Flames, flavorful. Even if they bump the damage up for Fire, and we did see one Fire Mage in Mythic testing that was pumping, I would probably only put it up to B just because I think the playstyle hasn't really been flavored up too much since since the beginning of that spec. In terms of Frost Decay I'm putting up in the A tier. I think that this is a spec that saw the return of two-handed Frost. The crowd goes wild, but they've seen a ton of nerfs since then. So I'm putting it tentatively into the A tier because honestly, this class feels nice. The fact that you have so many AoE, you have multiple builds. You have one that is like the most AoE build in the game. And I don't know why I'm not seeing more in Mythic Pluses queuing up. We've only been really seeing the flavor of the month crew showing up for Mythic Pluses and us shamans, right? But Frost, I think, is going to be in a pretty cool spot with that variation of two-handed and one-handers. The fact that you have new rune forges, which aren't really that useful, little flavor. But the fact that you have things like Abomination's Limb, stacking with Remorseless Winter, stacking with Sindragosa, stacking with Frostworm, I think it's going to be a pretty fun playstyle, especially going into Shadowlands, especially, which is kind of like a nod to Wrath of the Lich King, right? All that stuff. I think it's going to be a pretty cool class. Now, I would consider putting it in the S tier, but I think in terms of rotation, in terms of damage, that's really where I'm going to judge it a little bit more harshly. I don't think, the rotation is really that exciting compared to like an Ellie, compared to a Feral, like not as complex, but I do think it's in terms of the two-handed, one-handed, in terms of the different abilities that it now has baseline, I think it's pretty cool. In terms of Frost Mage, listen, I'm putting it in the B tier. Well, here's why. One, they're doing more damage than God right now. They're doing so much damage. They recently got significantly nerfed in this latest build. I am a little worried, and I've said this for a long time, and I probably said it for some other classes like Disc. I believe that there are certain classes that are currently they're being stood up by certain legendaries and certain conduits. And then I said that, and then the next day they nerfed the conduit that was buffing Ice Lance's damage against frozen targets. It was buffing it by 25% at rank 1. Now it's 4%. That was a great example of what could happen to certain classes. It already happened to Windwalker much earlier on in the beta. That could really bring it down a few pegs. Frost still is doing a lot of damage, but is definitely now in terms of in the ranks. My only problem with this spec is that if you go the Ice Lance build that everyone's going, you're just going to press Ice Lance, Ice Lance, Ice Lance, Ice Lance. Is that a fun playstyle? Maybe some Frost Mages out there really like, and I know that, listen, if you're diehard to your class, you're going to love whatever playstyle you get. I get it. My opinion is no single person in this out there wants their rotation to just be one button. And that's what concerns me a little bit, because Frost could be forced into a playstyle that does the most damage where you're basically just pressing one button. I know there is some, we've already talked on stream about it. There is some thought process that goes behind getting those buffed icicles or the buffed not Frost Shock, Ice Lances. And I like that. That sounds really awesome. I tried it a little bit, felt great, but if that fun playstyle is not the highest damage one and they don't tune it right, then the fun doesn't matter. People are just going to go for the damage, and that's why I'm going to put it in the B tier. If they fix that and it goes back to a little bit more rewarding playstyle, I'll bump it up to A or even to S. I personally want to play Frost Mage, but I don't want to play a spec like a DH equivalent caster where I'm just pressing one button, or I'm queuing up a few things, then I just press one button for 20 globals. We've seen it where the Ice Lance is doing 90% of some Frost Mage's damage. That's changed now since the nerf, but yeah. Okay, Fury Warrior, I'm putting into the B tier in an aspiration for hope, mainly because I think that I'm putting it up here. I got to put it in C tier. Here's the deal. Fury Warrior is more or less similar to what it was in BFA. The fact that they brought back so many flavorful things. This could get bumped to B and A depending on damage tuning again. I think that in terms of the playstyle, it could be good, but right now it doesn't feel like it's even going to be brought to the party. It just doesn't, in terms of toolkit for PvP, even in its Ignore Pain is on such a high rage cost. I feel like if they lowered that rage cost, or if they gave it a few more tools for its tool chest, I think it could be even more viable in PvP. I think currently in its current class design, it really needs a bit of help. The fact that it has Single-Minded Fury, Titan's Grip is cool, and the only way I see it going up this is if it gets damage tuning. It's unfortunate because I think Fury Warrior used to be one of my favorite classes, used to main Warrior, used to Arms PvP, Fury PvE, but I just don't feel like the legendaries and conduits are really enough for the Fury Warrior. Arms Warrior, looking fine. Fury Warrior, oddly, seems to be quite off. And Arms isn't even doing that much damage in PvE. Let me be straight with you. This is mostly, I just don't feel like its toolkit really represents the fact that it is the class and it is just a berserker. I feel like it needs a little bit more blood, oil, and sweat in there with the Fury Warrior. Next up, Demon Hunter. Demon Hunter, here's the deal. I'm actually going to put this in the B tier. I think that Demon Hunter is a little bit, a lot of people are poo-pooing on Demon Hunter. In reality, I think they have some really cool abilities. Their Night Fae, the Hunt, is an awesome ability that could be a lot of fun in PvP. Like a ton of fun. I was actually considering, after seeing some of the conduits, some of the legendaries, and then the Covenant abilities, I'm seeing some pretty cool stuff. And so I'm putting DH in the B tier.
Dude,
I could see bumping it up to the A tier if they got a little bit more interesting rotation, or if they got a few things removed from it and a little bit more like skill-oriented things, because DHs do so much damage just through AoE damage through their basic rotation. I wish they had, like, you had to use Fell Barrage. Fell Barrage would make it so, okay, that's how we're going to do more AoE cleave. And that was like the way you did AoE much more than just blade dancing, for example. Now, I haven't explored too much in this, but I have high hopes for the DHs. I just think that they're so poo-pooed on. I actually think that from a damage perspective, they're going to be fine in PvP. I really do. In PvE, I haven't seen them do very well, which is kind of weird, and I think that might be a damage scaling thing. So I'm putting this on the B tier, which is up from where I used to put it. Now, Holy Priest. Dude, no one is playing Holy Priest, and I don't understand why. Holy Priest has so many really cool things that they brought in. They brought in, first of all, the fact that you can go mind games, you can go thought steal, you can go fly up in the air and play astronaut cleave with DHs. Like, what? In PvP, I don't know why no one's playing it. Probably because Disc is so far ahead of things, but I just really, really think that Holy Priest is sleeper. I'm not really sure why no one is playing it. I know that, I don't know. Even in PvE, maybe it has to do with the healing scaling, but I really like their kit. The fact they're more damage oriented, the fact that even the way they are in BFA was kind of interesting, trying to get your stuns back up or starting to rotate and using abilities to bring other abilities back up from cooldown. I like where they're at. And I think that they're going to be in a better place. My only worry is that they're going to nerf Disc to make Holy shine more. And that would hurt my Disc Priest friends. So that's kind of where I'm at with Holy. I think that, yeah, their abilities are awesome. Their rotation is not bad. They're being outshined, it must be. But I think that from a playstyle and where they could get to is in a really, really cool place. Now, Holy Paladin, I'm going to put it here. Listen, I think that Holy Paladin, I've seen them do some pretty good stuff. I've had a lot of trouble with Holy Paladins and Mythic Pluses, just pugging, no offense, sorry. I'm sure that, well, sorry, but I've just had a lot of trouble, and I don't know why that is. I think that maybe they're just trying to figure out their role a little bit better. I have definitely been seeing Holy Paladins in the melee range because they're using Crusader Strike to generate Holy Power, which is brand new. I'm personally not a fan of Holy Power myself, but I think that, you know, if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. But I'm going to be putting them here. I think there are some builds now that have been coming out more recently that I've been seeing, like Marvel Mike was showing off in the Mythic we ran recently, that look good. It probably has to do with the Glimmer build, but the different Holy Shock builds are kind of interesting. But I'm going to put it down here for two reasons. One, in PvP. PvP, I think Holy Paladins are going to get the crap kicked out of them. I just think that people are kind of sick of that ineffable time period, right? And they're gonna give him some pressure. I think that Holy Paladin is also one that benefited really well in BFA, and I think that they're gonna take it on the PvP end more than the PvE end. From PvE perspective, again, you know, you're bringing in some auras, which is cool, but for me, I'm just not that excited about the Holy Powder, and I'm just not sure if I know if the healing throughput is there as well. Now, Marksman, I'm going to put Marksman up in the S tier. I'm going to put it up here tentatively because I think Marksman is one of the classes that Blizzard's focusing on, bringing them back in. I think they're also being stood up again on the fact that they can one-shot people in PvP, but I think that beyond that, they have a kit in PvE and PvP that is pretty versatile. The fact they brought back in volley, and I'm even seeing people use volley in PvP. is pretty cool. My concern about Hunter is that they have a 4-second pet summon again. I don't know if Marksman's even going to be using that, just using Lone Wolf. But I'm going to put him here because I actually think between Volley, the huge damage on aim shot, and the legendaries, they're actually pretty cool, especially by getting those Chimera shots proccing. So that's where I'm going to put Marksman. I do like that. Now, Monks, I'm going to be putting Monks down in the C tier, mainly because I was playing with Mystical. If you should definitely check out his YouTube channel. I'm not sure what he thinks. But in PvP, we were having quite a tough time. And in PvE, I wasn't, when I was talking to the monks we were playing with and seeing their healing, it wasn't like they were that impressed with some of the changes that they've been doing. They did get Touch of Death for PvP, which is cool. But in terms of PvE, when I was talking to them, basically saying that they weren't very excited by the legendaries, they weren't very excited by the conduits, and so I'm going to be putting them into the C tier. In terms of Outlaw Rogue, I'm going to put into the A tier. Here's why. I used to put it into the S tier. The reason I'm not is because I'm concerned that that the Outlaw rework maybe was like a little is every week they've been tweaking stuff with Outlaw. I feel like they've changed the roll the bones to be not based on combo points, to just be a cooldown, which is cool. But I'm a little worried that they're going to be like they're going to veer off the path of changing this class up enough where they're into like a weird spot. Like, for example, there's certain changes to Blade Flurry that came out that are like, you're definitely not wanting us to just be the only rogue spec in Mythic Plus, I see. But in PvP, I definitely see them coming to life with like the red buff rogue and stuff like that coming back into play, which is pretty cool, which I was playing with some Outlaw rogues and I was trying it out myself. If I play rogue, I will play Outlaw. That's the spec I want to play. I'm just concerned that they're where they started in the alpha and then where they're getting to is maybe not as great of a place. But we'll have to see how it works. The legendaries for rogues are very solid. I think that, again, those are things that could get adjusted, and that might impact certain specs of rogue over others. And I'm a little bit hesitant on Outlaw, but I'm interested and excited to play it myself. Ardred, I'm putting this up in the S tier. I think that their playstyle is not that much different from BFA, but they did get a lot of talents back that is, from the PvP talents of BFA now into main talents, and I think it's really cool. I think that Ardred, if I were to pick any healer right now to play, it'd be between Holy Priest, Ardred, and Disc Priest. Ardred, I think they're just going to be solid. I think the fact that as long as their healing throughput is decent, I think they're going to be a very fun play style. They're getting a lot of talents, a lot of legendaries that are going to allow it to choose. And it's a hybrid where you can choose, do I want to do a ton of damage? And can I set myself up in a build like that? It's one of the advantages hybrids have. Similarly, like Enhance, for example, Enhance can say, oh, I want to heal a lot. So it can go a lot of healing conduits, for example, and even a healing legendary. So similarly with Ardred, I think they're going to be in a pretty versatile position for PvP. I think they're going to be back. I think Shaman Ardred is going to be back. I think they're going to be coupled up with Affliction Warlocks, and you're going to be back to freaking 2010. So I'm pretty excited about that from PvP. For PvE, I think they're just still like king. I think between them and Disc Priest, those are going to be the kings of Mythic Plus. And in raids, I'm not really sure how I feel about them in raids. In raids, I mainly was dealing with our Shaman, which we can get into next. But yeah. So that's where I'm going to put Ardred. Rep Paladins, okay, listen, I don't know what's going on with Rep Paladins, but I really feel like Blizzard is forcing them down on people. They're like, you will be good and fun. Their conduits were just buffed up a lot. They got a lot of single target damage. The only concern I have for this class, Ret, and I'm really struggling between putting in A and B, is because they sit on top of Templar's Verdict. Now, listen, to be honest with you, that might be perfectly fine because Templar's Verdict hits like a truck, and then they just buffed it with some conduits that make it a truck in a plane that's going to hit you. I mean, it's just a savage, and maybe that's just the playstyle. I personally am not a big fan of those types of classes, so maybe I'll put it in the B tier. Hesitantly to put it into the A tier, mainly because their Templar's Verdicts are going to do so much damage, it's crazy. And some of the conduits and legendaries they're getting are augmenting their playstyle. That's what I want to see in specs, is when I go a legendary, it's going to change how I have to play. It gives you almost like a bunch of mini specs that you can go, mini builds that you can go with the legendaries conduits combo. Now, that doesn't really work when the conduits have a long cooldown, but that's fine, Blizzard. That's fine. You don't want to change it, whatever. So Rets, I think Rets are hitting so hard right now in the pre-patch especially, but in reality, I think that's going to get toned down a little bit from overall damage tuning. I think if I had to guess what happens to Ret, I bet Ret gets like a Templar Verdict adjustment and maybe an overall adjustment, not a legendary adjustment at the end of the day. So that's that. Now let's go ahead and jump into our Shaman. Our Shaman, I'm going to go ahead and I want to put it in the A tier chat. I want to put it in there, but I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to put it into the B tier. Now I'm putting it in the A tier, mainly because of a few things. My only hesitation here, and I feel like our Shaman could be extremely good. My only hesitation is in PvP. I'm really not sure where the PvP meta is going to shake out because our Shaman lost Pack Spirit. They lost the Vitality Conduit, which is huge for our Shaman. And now they're in a position where they have to be using their Riptides almost like as oh crap buttons. Blizzard's recently made some adjustments to the Earthshield Legendary. They're making some adjustments to its AoE healing capabilities. I think that it's going to be good. I think in PvE and Mythic Plus, our Shaman's going to be fine. It's going to be solid. Is it going to be the best? Probably not, because it won't be able to do quite as much damage as some of the other healers that can. But it is missing two things. It's missing an oh shit button, like Nature's Swiftness, Blizzard, hello. Nature's Swiftness went back to our Druid, which is an incredible ability. An oh shit button for that you dream about. Our Shaman didn't get it. I don't know why they did that. They used to both have it. But my only concern is that the oh shit button and the fact that in PvP we might just get decimated. And I play our Shaman as well, but that's my big concern. Depending on the speed at which things go, you need oh crap buttons, and you need to not be able to die uber fast. We don't have things like if you're in bear form, you're going to take a huge damage reduction. If you're, while you're stunned as a Disc Priest, you can do pain suppression. Holy Priest has Guardian Angel. Paladin has Bubble. Shaman has literally sit in Ghost Wolf form and cry until it's over. So, I mean, you could go Ghost Wolf form, 20% damage reduction, but, that is actually probably what we're going to have to do is try to pre-Ghost Wolf. But it's not even instant damage reduction. So anyway, that's where I'm going to put it. I think it's actually a very fun PvE healer to play. The legendaries and the conduits really spice up the rotation of healing, especially buffing certain things in a huge way in PvE, so your healing throughput could go through the roof. But in PvP, that's why I'm putting it here. S-Priest I'm putting up at the S tier. Okay, you're not surprised by this. I think S-Priest was reworked in a perfect way. The amount of changes they received to their talents, to their base core rotation, to their covenants. The covenants that they got are super cool. I mean, there's nothing to say other than that S-Priest is going to probably be an incredible PvE and PvP damage dealer. The only way that Blizzard could knock it down, it's not even based on a legendary anymore. It used to be the Mindbender legendary was doing so much. It's really the core. The only way they can nerf S-Priest at this time is they literally do an overall decimation to Devouring Plague after they've put it up on the pedestal, right? And that's a base thing that I don't think they're going to do. I think S-Priest is a very fun playstyle. It's one of the most smooth rotations of a caster that I think exist right now in the game. And I really have to say it's pretty impressive. The amount of changes in focus and detail is amazing. If the person that made S-Priest is out there, please go to Ellie and help me. Help me. No, I'm just kidding. Ellie's not in that bad of a spot. I just think that AoE rotation. The only thing about S-Priest I will say, and the only reason I would have almost put it at A, is their AoE rotation is unique. The way that you do AoE and you spread your dots is unique with the Seared Nightmare, talent. So it's kind of interesting there. Some of the legendaries conduits flare it up in terms of its damage and its playstyle, but overall I think it's just extremely smooth. Sub-Rogue, I'm putting listen, I know what you're thinking. Sub-Rogue goes on the S tier, Tiqqle. Listen, I personally I'm going to put it on the A tier, okay, because I know it's good and I know people are having a ton of fun with it. It has a higher skill cap with shadow dances and all that stuff, much more interactive, a lot of shadow steps, right? I just hope that they don't put it into a place where it loses where it used to be, which was skill cap equals performance. I've seen so many sub-rogues on the beta. It just I just roll my eyes at this point, kind of like Assassination Rogue used to be. I just hope that they're not like anyone can be a sub-rogue and do incredibly well, that's my only hope. The legendaries are cool. The conduits make sense. But and the covenants are used to be insane. Now I don't even know what you go. Probably Night Fae. That's the one I want to try out for Outlaw. But anyway, I'm going to put it here because I think that they're in a really good spot. The class design is great. The AoE potential might need a little bit more help, but in terms of PvP, they're savages. So I'm going to put it right there. Survival Hunter, I'm going to be putting onto the B tier. This is another class that I'm going to put right next to Demo, Boomkin, Ellie, all these, because it depends on how they do the damage tuning. If they tune damage, Survival has a rewarding playstyle in terms of rotation. It's more complicated than most other melee DPS. It can actually use a bow, or you can actually switch from using melee to a ranged weapon, and that is a skill cap I really like. The question is, will that be satisfying at the end of the day? And does that mean? And that will be the decision that will make it either in the meta or out of the meta. Will you bring a survival? Will you not? They don't bring the utility that other certain classes do. They don't do that. So really what you're going for here is raw damage output, and that's where they need to go sky high with it. I also think there were some opportunities to change some talents that they didn't do. I think the bomb mechanic is really cool, though I think that it might be a little overcomplicated. I feel like if they did simplify that a little bit, and I know survivals are going to hate me for that, it would be a lot more approachable. It's definitely a more complex spec. I'd put it on the same tier as Feral Druid as being complex. But in terms of damage, like this could easily rank up if they were to do something about, I think, like giving it a more aggressive legendary, or scaling its damage up a little bit to feel a little bit more satisfying when you do the rotation. So that's where I'm going to put it. Unholy DK. Unholy DK is pumping. I personally do think that they are in a pretty good spot overall. It's kind of crazy, again, that you're not seeing many DKs at all in Mythic Pluses, which is kind of sad. I don't really know why that is, but they're not showing up. When I played it, it felt very much like BFA, but again, there were some flavorful things that you can get, like gargoyles there, anti-magic zones there. I think that as long as they do tuning and they bring this up there, this could be just as well with their Frost Brethren. But I think right now, to me, it's very similar to BFA in terms of flavor, and it's not like a blowout, like super exciting. Their conduits are cool. Their covenants are cool, similar to Frost DK. But yeah, I'm putting that on the B tier. Lastly, Windwalker. Listen. I'm putting Windwalker on the B tier as well, mainly because Windwalker was up on a pillar again. That pillar was called the Venthyr Covenant ability. And I think that because that was adjusted, if that gets really destroyed in PvP, they're going to be gone, right? Well, maybe not gone. Like, they're still going to be good. But the change to Touch of Death made me sad. I know that some of that's baked into Zwen now. But the change to Touch of Death was kind of sad for Windwalkers. It was better for Mistweavers. But I'm not that excited about Windwalkers. I think their rotation has always been, again, a more complex melee. I don't really know where they're going to land. They got a lot of adjustments early on that made some of the things in their rotation, like their Fist of Fury getting buffed by 20% by a conduit. That's gone. So that's all I'm going to say about that. Now let's go ahead and review the tanks. I'm going to have to put them up on the screen here by themselves. I would put into the S tier DH tank and Prot Paladin. DH tank, because I think that with the sigil that is being brought in from Kyrian, I think it can, well, number one, we know it can do a ton of damage, and it's doing really well. I think that might actually finally be something we see more often in PvE now. And again, in PvE in Mythic Plus, PvP in Mythic Plus, Rated Battlegrounds, maybe they're going to make a comeback. Now, for Prot Paladins, I personally just really enjoy the Prot Paladin playstyle. I like their Covenant abilities, throwing out many shields. They have legendaries that make them do huge damage. When you make tanks actually feel like they're contributing more than just being a meat shield, I think it really rewards them. At least it does for me. It makes you a contributing member, and the way you pull will also define your damage, so you really care about that by doing big pulls and that type of stuff. So that's where I'll put Prot Paladin and DH. I'm going to put the DK tank on A tier. I've ran with a lot of DK tanks. They're just brick walls. Their amount of healing is just crazy, and I would say maybe they're not quite as exciting as some others, but I haven't seen them do the damage that a DH or a Prot Paladin can do, though I'm sure it's out there. All tanks can do a baseline, like, pretty good damage because of certain legendaries, but I think it's interesting when they go a different legendary that makes them do even more damage. You like to see that. And the legendary I'm talking about is one that when an elite hits you, you reverse 15% of, like, 15% of your max health is like reflected onto the target, the elite that hits you first. So I'm going to put DK in the A tier. In terms of the other tanks, Warrior, Brewmaster, I'm going to be putting them in, and Guardian, I'm going to be putting them into the B tier. Mainly because I think there were some changes to those classes, but I haven't seen something that has really made me say, whoa, that's really cool. I've jumped on them a little bit. I've explored them a little bit. Guardian could do some pretty big damage again with Venthyr and some of its legendaries stacking up damage. And Warrior again has more utility, has more not more survivability because they are already beasts. And then Brewmaster we've only seen a little bit of, but they're very I haven't really seen them do as much damage either. And obviously I'm kind of gauging this from a damage equals fun, but that's kind of my breakdown and how I would rank the tanks. So guys, with that being said, I want to thank GMG Performance again for sponsoring this video. And if you guys want a pair of these glasses, or if you want to check it out, check out the link below. Follow it, check it out. For the next few days, it's going to be 40% off, so check it out for the best price. And with that being said, come by the stream. Thank you to the Patreons, the Twitch subs. I know this was a little bit longer video, but you know, this is my new breakdown of all the classes. This is based on my opinion. So let me know what you think down in the comments. Come yell at me and how dumb I am in my stream every day, twitch.tv/tickle this, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care, everybody.